To varying degrees, these shows put their worst foot forward. Whether their lead was the least interesting part of a successful whole, or a dud who could have been removed from proceedings for a more enjoyable experience. At the end of the day, when you're first on the call sheet, the responsibility is massive, and not everyone can live up to that. So with that in mind, I'm Gareth from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 TV shows better when the main character wasn't in them. Number 10, New Girl, Jessica Day. Zooey Deschanel was the hook used to bring people into New Girl. The advertising was heavily based around the adorable qualities that she and her character Jessica Day shared. And indeed, New Girl's Jess did seem a natural extension of Deschanel's persona. The series, however, quickly evolved beyond the initial episode's focus on Jess and her attempts to re-enter the LA dating scene as a quirky, melodious singleton. The characters with whom she shared the loft, Nick, Schmidt, and Winston, along with best pal STACEY, embarked on their adventures with and without Jess's involvement. The issue was that these were without exception more interesting than whatever Jess was actually doing. She was relegated to the straight woman on her own show. Such were the wacky qualities of the other characters and their more comedically gifted actors, particularly the exceptional Max Greenfield. Jess still works well as an anchor, and in no way would you want her removed from the show, but she's the title character and yet consistently the least important part of the puzzle. Number 9, How I Met Your Mother, Ted Mosby. Ted Mosby, circa seasons 1 to 3, is a great rom-com lead. He's a swooning romantic, funny, and charming. Certainly flawed, but never truly unpleasant, and massively relatable in his quest to find the one. But as the show wore on, the writers made the lazy decision to highlight all of Ted's most cartoonishly unpleasant characteristics. He went from a minor know-it-all to a pretentious lunatic, who for the purposes of a bad joke in one episode could speak fluent Italian, for reasons. He's a terrible friend, making a real effort to ruin Barney and Robin's wedding in the final season, and treating the latter terribly for most of the show's run. He becomes a character who makes very little sense, with the story he's telling to his kids becoming utterly inappropriate many times over. Yes, actor Josh Radnor does the best he can with the material, but the disastrous finale to How I Met Your Mother hinges largely on the mangling of its lead character. And when your show also boasts riots like the aforementioned layered and hilarious Barney and Robin, those regular Ted detours started to become a living nightmare. Number 8, Gavin and Stacey, Gavin SHIPMAN. Gavin and Stacey is one of the most beloved British sitcoms of the 21st century. A warm love story between a guy from Essex and a girl from Wales, whose relationship unfolds over 3 seasons and a few Christmas specials, encapsulating their highs and lows from whirlwind romance to domestic travails. The problem is, no one really watched it for that. It was a sitcom first and foremost, and we were there for the laughs. These were provided by the couple's best pals, Smithy and Nessa, and their families. They weren't provided by Stacey so much, and they certainly weren't provided by Gavin. Poor Matthew Horn was given little to do in the show beyond look exasperated by the latest setback in his fairy tale love story, and to react to those around him, particularly the boisterous antics of Smithy. He is played by James Corden, who co-wrote the show with Ruth Jones as Nessa. Unsurprisingly, these two get the lion's share of the funny stuff. There's no show without Gavin, of course, but he's not the main point of interest for any viewer save perhaps Mr. and Mrs. Horn, while Joanna Page as Stacey manages to milk a lot more out of similarly meager material. Number 7, Angel. The LA-based Buffy spin-off was intended as a darker and more serious entry into Joss Whedon's Vampireverse, and accordingly, the terse, tortured Angel was the perfect main character. For many years, David Boreanaz was at least solid in the role of this bloodsucker with a soul, determined to find salvation for his years of evil. But I'd be lying if I said he wasn't a little boring. Buffy and Angel alike had cast swimming with fascinating and colourful characters. Angel could boast demons, gang members turned monster hunters, an evil corporation, and a more exciting, besouled vampire among his entourage. In comparison, the stoic, black-clad lead was a little on the dull side. Boreanaz's performance was, by design, not the most expressive. Meanwhile, he wasn't quite such a relatable lead as Sarah Michelle Gellar's Buffy, who juggled high school and hellmouths, nor such a vulnerable one. Let's not forget she died twice in 7 years. This didn't stop Angel from being a compelling and often truly inspired series. But while the title character was a compelling enough lead, the strength of the show was in its world, not its hero. Number 6, Derek. It's worth noting that Derek is not by any means a great show. In fact, it's a pretty bad one, filled with one-dimensional characters, recycled gags, and Ricky Gervais' recent obsession with making trite observations about the nature and importance of kindness. There are good things about about it, mainly the work of Kerry Godliman, who's given more to do here than her thankless role in Afterlife. The biggest issue with Derek, though, is Derek, the character portrayed by Gervais. 9 years after the fact, it's amazing that a TV network allowed him to actually do this. Despite his protestations, it can't help but feel like he's doing an impression of a disabled person that ranges from clumsy to downright cruel. Even giving him the benefit of the doubt in his intentions, Derek is a dire character. Like Forrest Gump before him, his role is to deliver simple truisms that are meant to be profound, but are in fact greetings card quality observations about being nice to other people. Some people liked it well enough at the time, but it has not aged well and only seems to be getting worse. Number 5, Scrubs, JD. Between this role and Garden State, Zach Braff became the poster child for male leads whose immaturity and neediness was supposed to be entirely likable traits. He's less galling in Scrubs than he is in Garden State, mainly because we're aware he didn't write himself any scenes in Scrubs in which he kisses Natalie Portman, but still manages to be the most twee and irritating part of a show that could lean towards the twee and irritating. The main problem with JD is how dominant he is in the show. We're constantly told how great and smart of a doctor he is, while in most contexts he's presented as an immature man-child with a big ego, but fragile self-esteem, and he is far less intriguing or compelling as the other more complex and troubled characters on show, like the outstanding John C. McGinley's Dr. Perry Cox. Indeed, almost the entirety of the original finale is dedicated to the other characters telling JD, who's leaving the hospital, just how great he is and how badly they'll miss him. After nigh on 200 episodes following the guy around, that is a bitter ending indeed. Number 4, Sons of Anarchy, Jax Teller. Kurt Sutter's Shakespearean biker gang drama is a deeply flawed show which went on far too long, and often lacked the courage to kill off significant characters. But there were many fine elements to it as well. The performances from Ron Perlman, Katie Sagal, and more were terrific, and the world of the show was undeniably interesting. Unfortunately, the show made the decision to center its narrative around by far the least compelling character on its roster. Jax Teller was an attempt at yet another complex anti-hero who ended up being anything but complex. He scowled and moped a lot, carried out some brutal violence, exhibited some remorse, and repeated over 7 increasingly dull seasons. We were undoubtedly meant to think Jack was very cool indeed, and no doubt many viewers were inclined to agree. That only goes so far though, and after you've seen him ride his Harley over the California highways once, you've basically got the idea. It didn't help that actor Charlie Hunnam is, despite his best efforts, not one of the world's greatest performers. And when matched with thespian heavyweights and the colourful cast of supporting players, this tough outlaw looked awfully flavourless. Number 3, Orange is the New Black, Piper Chapman. Season 1 of prison drama Orange is the New Black uses Piper Chapman as the audience surrogate character. Sentenced to a custodial sentence for historical drug crimes, she's completely out of her depth, a privileged white woman surrounded by people who are largely nothing like her. Over the course of the season and series, we learn more about her fellow inmates, many of whom are underrepresented on TV in the way Piper and actress Taylor Schilling are very much not. With few exceptions, the surrounding characters are more interesting than Piper, with stories more relatable, interesting, and important. It would have been easy enough to take Piper out of the equation to spend some more time on the rest of the Litchfield prisoners. Instead, Piper remains inarguably the main character for the 7-season duration. She's not a bad character by any means, and it should be said that Schilling's performance is excellent, but the writers can clearly be seen scrambling for more excuses to keep Piper in the limelight, often pushing the credulity of the show as a result. Number 2, Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett. From the second it became official that not only would we be seeing even more of the long-adored and largely underutilized bounty hunter by the name of Boba Fett, but that he'd be getting his own Disney Plus Mandalorian spin-off, fans were right to fully board the hype train that Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, and Robert Rodriguez were fueling up. Yet what ultimately landed on our screens by the time the Book of Boba Fett had fully delivered its 7-episode run exposed a rather depressing flaw for those deeply fond of the green armored stallion. With the show's first few episodes focusing on Fett's fate post-Sarlacc pit swallowing, and the time the son of Django had spent bonding with Tusken Raiders on Tatooine, fans simply didn't feel all that connected to the apparent feature player in this latest installment of an otherwise captivating Disney TV galaxy far, far away. From Chapter 5 onwards, however, the series creators revealed their true hand, that being the return of everyone from Din Djarin to Luke Bloody Skywalker with Ahsoka Tano and Cad Bane showing sprinkled in for good measure. All in all, those last 3 entries dwarfed what came before them, and made Boba feel like an entity simply not designed to carry his own projects solo. Number 1. Dexter Morgan. For a while, Dexter's central character was its main selling point. The moral ambiguity of the serial killer who only killed other serial killers was a fascinating puzzle to unlock, and Michael C. Hall's committed, subtle performance was awards catnip. As the show went on though, Dexter became his show's biggest problem. His moral code turned even foggier as he killed to survive, to keep killing essentially, rather than to redress some karmic balance in the universe. This reached a head in the show's initial final season, whose infamous ending remains one of the worst in TV history. The showrunners didn't know how to solve a problem like Dexter. He'd reached a point at which his crimes needed to be answered for. The logical conclusion would be a prison sentence or death, right? Instead, he sailed into a storm, then became a lumberjack. It was so disastrous that the show was rebooted years later, and the results were similarly poor. There's a great world in there with some quality support and terrific antagonists, but Dexter was an increasingly unworkable character whose writing ultimately spelled the decline and demise of his show. So going forward, it might be wise to leave this Dex alone for good. And that's our list. Know any other TV shows better when the main character wasn't in them? Let us know all about them in the comment section right down below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button. Also, make sure to head on over to whatculture.com if you like this sort of thing and find more articles just like the one this video you're watching is based on. I've been Gareth from whatculture.com. Thank you as always for clicking on this video today, and I'm sure I'll see you very, very soon. Bye bye!